I am a mom to a 14-month-old little girl, and I live on Oahu, Hawaii. I'm a former crisis therapist turned stay-at-home mom, and I'm still looking forward and searching as to how I'm going to balance mom life and professional life. My name is Emily, and I'm a miraculous mama.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Miraculous Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Joy, and we believe in empowering women through storytelling and education. And I'm so glad that you're here today. I am 41 weeks, although this episode's going to come out later. I am going to just take a couple week break to let my body heal and recover. I haven't had the baby yet, but you guys, I am contracting, so that's fun. Like right now, oh my gosh. But I'm going to be super excited to share my birth story with you. By the time this episode comes out, the baby will have come out. But like I said, Vito and I really want to be able to spend some time together and enjoy our new family. And so I have a couple of fun podcasts for you guys until we come on and share our birth story. And, today's podcast, actually, you guys remember Jess Gronas. She came on in May to talk about her journey with preeclampsia. And then she had me on her podcast called the Fit and Faithful Podcast. And she just really dug deep with me, asking me tons of questions about how I became a doula, what we do as doulas, and just even my life, and a lot of information that I haven't ever shared with you guys on here. And it's the work that I'm really passionate about. And I try to focus most of the podcasts on the guests that are coming on, and sometimes just sharing a little bit of educational information. So she was just such an awesome interviewer, and I asked her permission to use the episode that she had on her podcast, the Fit and Faithful Podcast, to use on here while I was on a little maternity leave, and she agreed. So I'm going to play that interview for you guys. It's, like I said, kind of a chance to get to know me a little bit better, how I got into doula work, what exactly doulas do, and just even some of the numbers and statistics and studies behind it, and why the United States is not the best place in the world to have a baby in, but there's a lot of amazing resources and education out there. And I always love when I get to talk about my passion, which is my doula work. So we dive deep. It's a really fun interview. Like I said, she's awesome at asking questions. And so without further ado, The Role of a Doula by Jess Gronas.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. I have Elizabeth Presta here. If you've ever listened to the Miraculous Mamas podcast, you will be so excited for this podcast. And if you haven't, I know you're going to start listening to it. It's so cool because, Elizabeth, you've been in my ears, like in my big headphones when I'm working out all the time. Every time I'm able to listen to a new podcast of yours, I'm doing it. And so it's just such an honor to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. That means a lot to me.
So I want you to just start with sharing who you are and what got you to where you're at, and share with the audience like all the awesome things that you're doing for women.
Yeah, so I'm a certified birth doula and a certified life coach. And I definitely did have a crazy journey getting there. I was just one of those people that right out of high school, like I had friends who are like, oh, I'm going to go major in this, I'm going to whatever. And I just had no idea ever. And I was always like envious of my friends who were like, oh, I know what I want to do with my life. And it took me years to figure it out. So I always just kind of like worked and dabbled in different things. And my sister was having a home birth when this was 12 years ago. So I was 21, and I was taking a class where I had to write a research paper. Excuse me. So I wrote a paper on home birth versus hospital birth. And I started doing tons of research and looking at, what was eye-opening to me was the birthing statistics. So when you start looking at other countries, like in Europe and just other high income nations, Canada, and we had a higher maternal death rate. And I'm like, why are more women dying in the United States than in these other countries? And that's like per capita. It's not like, yes, we have a higher population here than Finland, so, but it was like 1 in 100 type thing. So we have the highest maternal death rate out of all the other high income nations. And we even have a higher maternal death rate than Iran, than Kazakhstan, than Turkey, these other nations that don't have good healthcare at all. So I'm like, okay, this is weird. Like, why is this happening? And then I got to experience my sister's home birth. I was there for the birth of my nephew and I was 21 years old. And I was like, holy crap, birth is amazing. Women are amazing. And this might be something that I'm interested in. It kind of stayed in the back of my mind from there. But I didn't really pursue it until a few years later. And I remember I signed up to take a course to learn more about doulas. It was a little over 7 years ago. So I took a class and I started the certification process and I took on a few clients. I did some births and I just absolutely loved it. But then I got the opportunity to do some travels. So I left the country, I traveled and ended up taking a job in Tanzania for 6 months. And coming back from that, I mean, it was really cool there because birth is like, it's crazy because where I was at in the Serengeti, they still do female genital mutilation. So these women were being circumcised and basically when they would birth, they would kind of rip back open and then they'd sew them back shut. So it was very eye-opening because I just like realized that women need advocates, right? And I understood, like, I've always been somebody who's huge for preserving culture. And it's like, okay, but when culture is harming people, then there needs to be something done about it. And like talking to the men in the community, we're like, so why do you circumcise the women? And this man told me, he's like, so that they don't become prostitutes. They're not allowed to enjoy sex because then they'll become prostitutes. And I'm like, whoa, like this is messed up, right? So that, because that's not how we were created. Like you're created, like God created sex for us to enjoy. And so otherwise it wouldn't be pleasurable. It'd be like solely for mating purposes, like the majority of the animal kingdom, right? So it was very eye-opening. So coming back from that, I'm like, okay, I definitely know that I want to help women. And I know that when I did some doula stuff that I really enjoyed it, but I wanted to dive a little bit deeper. So I went into a life coaching program, which I did for the next couple of years. And I was thinking going into it, like, I have all of this life experience. I've traveled to 31 countries. I did a lot of it by myself. I'm such an empowered woman. I have so much to offer. And like the first weekend in my life coach training, you are taught this has nothing to do with you. Like you don't give advice. Your experience doesn't even really matter. And I'm like, oh, but it was so cool because it's like, you learn that it's not about you, it's about the other person. And the whole point of coaching is they have their own answers. They have their own truths and you're helping them figure out their own journey. And that's the same when it comes to doula program. So I was able to go back into the doula program with that new set of like, just understanding, like, because before I was so hopped up on like birth should maybe be a certain way, but then just realizing, no, birth is so many different ways and that's amazing. And everybody's so different. And my job is literally to provide emotional and physical comfort to a woman throughout labor and delivery. And from the point she hires me in the pregnancy process to provide information and help her get resources and just feel empowered going into the experience. And then when you're in the experience, feeling heard and understood. And it's not my experience, it's your experience. So it was so cool to be able to kind of combine the two and be able to take that moving forward to become a doula.
We're going to take a quick break. So the journey of parenthood begins with no map. They literally hand you a kid and you go home and start this life. And as parents, I know that we all want the best for our kids. We want them to grow up and feel confident and be lifelong learners who are ready to take on the world and contribute to society. But with the current things going on in the world and the ever-changing landscape around us, it's disrupting our routines, impacting our communities. And how do you make sure that your kids are building the skills that they need from the very start? And that is where Homer comes into play. It's where the epic journey of learning begins. And I know that I don't have a reading age child yet, but we actually downloaded the app to take a look. We love to extensively research things before we do them. So we've already read like 3 parenting books. And we heard about the Homer app. And it's really, really cool because it is the proven to learn to read program powered by your child's passions. There's memberships and it includes 2 apps, Homer Stories and Reading. There's 4 customizable profiles included with each membership, so you have one for each kid. And Homer Reading combines your child's passions and current reading level to create a personalized learn to read plan. And it's proven to work. Just 15 minutes a day of Homer Reading has been shown to increase early reading scores by 74%. That is huge. And you can explore the app with your child on your tablet. And when they're in the app, there's no ads. It's safe and easy for your kid to use. Instead of scrolling through YouTube or watching TV, it'll keep your child engaged with educational content and activities. It's research-backed, so Homer offers thousands of kid-tested lessons so they know that it's fun and that your kids are going to love them. On ABCs, phonics, sight words, and more. They're all designed by learning experts, and you can personalize it. The programs are fueled by your kids' interests and grows with them as they build their skills, all while deepening their love of learning. So it is such an amazing app. Go download it today. You can visit learnwithhomer.com/mamas to start a free 60-day trial. And I would just love to hear from you guys how much your kid loves it and what difference you see in those 60 days. So go download Homer, go visit learnwithhomer.com/mamas to start your free 60-day trial. Now back to the episode.
So just kind of all these different snippets, I feel like kind of led me to where I am with the doula stuff. And it was just this last year that I started doing it full time. I always did it kind of part-time, taking on a birth here and there, because making money as a doula is really hard when you're starting out. Starting out a business, you have to find clients, you have to, especially if people have kids, you need to find childcare. And for me, it was like, okay, even if I find some clients, it's not enough to pay my bills. So I still have to have my job, but I can't just call out of my job whenever I want when somebody goes into labor, so I would kind of take on, like, last year, I think I did 5. Like, I took on like 5 births.
Right, because you have to be available.
You're on call 24/7, right? So, but I still needed a full-time job. I was living downtown Chicago. Rent's not cheap. Saving up for a wedding, So,
Yeah.
So I just kind of dabbled in it, and then it was this last year that I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on the podcast and on birth work. So, and my whole thing with the podcast too was I wanted to empower women through storytelling and education. So I just want people to listen to the podcast and listen to different experts and different topics and different birth stories and women who have had different experiences, so that you don't feel isolated in motherhood or in your story, so that you can still feel heard and be a part of a community. And with the educational aspect, it's fun for me because I'm learning, but also just so people know their options. That, I've never thought about birth control this way. Like, we recently did the episode with natural family planning, which I've never done, but I'm like, it sounds really cool. I don't know how to do it. So it's fun talking to somebody who that's what she and her husband used for 8 years. And then she used it to get pregnant. And through the process, she learned so much about her body, about her cycle and her health even. And so it's just kind of fun hearing from different people, so that okay, if me and my husband, after this baby, we don't want to have a kid for a while, I never considered this before, but maybe it is an option, or now I know more information about this one thing so that I can just make a better decision for myself and my family.
Yeah. And you've had a lot of awesome experts on the show and empowering women as well, just sharing their story. And I've loved that. What made you first think like, I want to create a podcast?
I mean, it started, it was something I wanted to do for quite a while. And then I partnered with a couple other people for the first year of it. And they were new moms, and I worked as a doula. So it was like, okay, you guys can talk about your mom experience and I'll kind of be the doula on the show. And then after a year, it was just kind of going our separate ways. And I'm like, I really want this to be empowering. You know, I don't want it to necessarily be about us just talking. It's like, I had the opportunity then to do it on my own. And that's when I created Miraculous Mamas. It was like a little over a year ago. And I'm like, I really want this to really dive into that community, to really, like, for me, it's like, it's nice to get people from all different walks of life on, but my focus wasn't like, just get somebody famous on, which I felt like it kind of was before. And now it was like, okay, but what are they going to talk about? Like, what do they have to offer? Get somebody who has an experience or a story to share. And so I really wanted to turn it more educational and bring on more experts and specialists. And so it was cool because I got to talk to one of the top infertility doctors in the world. He lives here in Chicago. So I went downtown to his office, and he's so cool. Brian Kaplan. And I actually met him at my work when I was working downtown. So it was just a small world. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have you on my podcast. So it was nice to then be able to focus on just the learning part, because although like doulas are considered labor experts, so when you're in labor, we know how, like, what your body's doing, what it's going through. We know the signs to look for when there are different interventions that happen. We're there to bounce the ideas off of you, to talk about, okay, are you comfortable with this? Like, are you, do you need a minute to think it over? Like, because a lot of times you feel like when the doctor comes in, it's like, okay, I think we need to do this now. So you have to give an answer, and you can be like, you know what, I need a little bit of time to think it over and figure out what all my options are. So, but I'm definitely not an expert in other fields. So it's nice to be a part of this learning process, because then right when the podcast started, I had just gotten married, and I'm like, okay, I know Vito and I want to start a family soon. So I want to bring on tons of people so that I can learn, so that we can be prepared. And I knew so many other women were on that journey as well.
Yeah, that is so, so cool. And so, like, going back to the doula piece, I have a lot of questions about doulas.
Yeah.
Because I personally did not have one. I considered it. I talked to one who, like, just talking to her was so informative. And I'm like, you're just amazing, just the information that she had. But how many births have you been a part of? Do you know?
I've been a part of about 30.
That's so cool. Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so are a lot of those, because I think a lot of people think if they have a doula, it needs to be a home birth.
Right. I have only done 3 or 4 home births. The rest have been in the hospital.
Yeah. And then have there been any that have been high stakes situations, or any that result in a C-section? Or
I was actually going over my my numbers the other day. And so, like, the national average is about a 38% C-section rate for women in general. And I've had about a 12% C-section rate. So I think of like 5 women or 4 women have had a C-section. And one of them was breech. And it was just, she knew it then. They tried the inversion, they tried everything, and then going into it. So I still went to the hospital, because they selected the day. So I was there just to kind of emotionally comfort her throughout it. And then the other ones were I think 2 of them were attempted VBACs, and just things were not progressing at all. And then the other one, it was actually an extremely messed up situation. I cried after that birth because I've never felt so sorry for somebody in my life. That hospital that she birthed at was horrible. The staff was horrible. They used so, like, I actually had, she was resting and a nurse came in to debrief the other nurse, and she's like, oh, this is her birth plan. And the nurse picked it up and goes, that's so funny, and laughed at it. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, they basically kept telling her, like, you can't do this. You need to get a C-section. And it was just not, it was very heartbreaking for me. I just remember leaving and bawling and calling Vito and being like, I feel traumatized from this birth. I can't even imagine how this mom feels. And that was like the only time I feel like it took a lot for me to hold my crap together, because I was like, Liz, this isn't about you. This is about this client. You need to hold it together. But I was so like emotionally worn out from this hospital.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty crazy experience, and her family wasn't supportive at all. They all had C-sections, and her, like, when she finally decided to get one, her sister's like, I told you to get one. Like, it was so hard because she could have done it, and everything was just pushed on her. So, like, before I even got there, and it was a very tough situation. So
yeah,
that was the other C-section.
Yeah.
And so, I learned a lot from it.
Right.
All right, we're going to take a quick break to talk about the importance of peace of mind as a parent. And now that our little girl is home, I know that we are forever learning what her cues are, and, up at every noise that she makes during the night. And we're just learning how to be really good parents. And one thing that has given us a lot of confidence is the Newton baby crib mattress, because it is such an amazing product. There are really sad cases every year where babies can die from suffocation, and getting a good night's rest is so crucial for you and your baby. And knowing that your baby is sleeping on this mattress, and that you're giving them the best, can help give you that peace of mind. Because this mattress is fully breathable, washable, recyclable, 2-stage mattress. The Newton Crib mattress is 100% washable. It's the only 100% washable crib mattress available on the market, which is a parent's dream. And independent tests have showed that a baby gets 97% more air while breathing through a Newton Crib mattress than on a traditional crib mattress, giving you that peace of mind. Plus, it's Green Guard Gold certified and voted number 1 by leading pediatric experts and sleep coaches worldwide. Newton Baby is offering the listeners $50 off your Newton Crib mattress plus free shipping. Just go to newtonbaby.com and enter code MAMAS, and you can try 100 nights of sleep on the Newton Baby. And if you're not happy, they will offer free returns. Just go to newtonbaby.com and enter code MAMAS. Because it's 100% washable, the investment will actually save you money in the long run, because you can pass it down from child to child. They also have an amazing challenge called the Breathe to Believe Challenge. It's hashtag Breathe to Believe. You can look it up. Vito and I actually both did it. We laid face down on the mattress to see if we could breathe. And I'm highly claustrophobic, was nervous to do it, but I did it. And we could both breathe. So that gave us additional confidence, knowing that if our child was to roll over, that they would be able to breathe. And again, giving you that peace of mind, because being a new parent is so stressful. But if you are looking for the number 1 baby mattress out there that's 100% breathable, washable, and backed by top pediatrics worldwide, then look no further. So many parents have claimed their Newton Baby mattress is a complete lifesaver, completely eliminating any fears and angst as a parent. And remember, Newton Baby is offering the listeners $50 off your Newton Crib mattress plus free shipping. Just go to newtonbaby.com, enter code MAMAS, and you can also try the 100 nights of sleep on Newton Baby. And if you're not happy, Newton offers free returns. Just go to newtonbaby.com, enter code MAMAS to get $50 off today. You can't put a price tag on your child's safety. Now back to the episode.
And so in those kinds of situations, I mean, I guess that's what you end up telling yourself, is it's about her, not me. But like, how do you find balance in that, where maybe your client told you, no, I want this, and then maybe they told you beforehand, I want XYZ, and then other people are kind of pushing her when it's not necessary to do other things?
Yeah, I feel like my job is not to give medical advice. It's not. So when the doctor comes in and is like, hey, listen, I feel like we need to take this measure or this intervention, I'm not like, oh no, she said she doesn't want that. That's a misconception of doulas. A lot of people think that the word advocate is associated with it a lot, which is actually the wrong word to use, because when you think of an advocate, you think of this person like standing up for that person. I'm not like standing up talking to the hospital staff on behalf of my client. I'm there to empower my client and to be like, okay, do you want a minute to think about it? And then having the conversation like, okay, like, let's weigh the pros and cons. Is, maybe ask your provider, is this an emergency? Is this really necessary? What are my other options? A lot of women don't know that they can ask like, okay, what are my other options at this point? And a lot of times when you ask, they can be like, well, we can give your body a couple more hours to see, and then we can whatever, so a lot of people don't know that you can even just ask for that. And so it's hard. I feel like, I've been to tons of births where they don't go at all how the client had planned, but they're still amazing experiences. Because that's also part of our job, is to the emotional comfort and being like, you got this, you're still awesome. And just like speaking life and truth into these mamas, even if they decided to get an epidural and they really didn't want one, or whatever it may be, and having that conversation and being there and encouraging them and supporting them and being like, that doesn't mean that you gave up. Your body's still working hard. You're still doing so much. You're still going to have this baby, and having those conversations with them.
That is so awesome. And I think that support is huge. So what would you say to somebody who's like, well, I'm thinking about having a doula, but sorry. But my husband will be there. Like, why would I need a doula if I have my husband?
Is your husband a labor expert? That's what I would ask. Because that's really what the difference is. We're trained and experienced in this. We're labor experts. Your husband has no idea what's going on. He has no idea what to do. Even if you take a course, he'll definitely get some really good tools and resources to use. But when you're in the moment, it's sometimes hard to remember, but we're doing this all the time. And I've actually had so many dads advocate for getting a doula after having one, because they're like, I could have done what you did, or we actually give them a job to do so that they feel important and they're part of the experience. So it's like, hey, like, you don't know how to help her right now. Let me show you how to do this thing to comfort her. Or, hey, I feel like she really needs you to look her in the eyes and be like, you got this. Like, we learned to read the mom too. And I could tell, like, at this birth I was at recently, she kind of kept like looking for him. And I'm like, you need to stay by her side. You need to stay by her side. Like, do not leave right now. And she was just like holding his hands and like staring at him, while I was doing other things. Or there's so many different jobs and roles to fill. And sometimes for me, it's like, I'm going to show you what to do. And then I'm going to make sure you guys have everything you need. You guys have water to drink. You guys are set. And sometimes there's long labor experiences where dad might need a break. He might need to go make some phone calls. He might need to grab some dinner. And that's where I come in. Like, I am your constant throughout labor. I'm there no matter what. And then he doesn't have to panic and freak out because he has to go pee, So it's really a tag team thing. And we want partners to feel so much a part of this experience as well. And to feel like, okay, like I was useful in it. Or there's dads who, like, we've had people who are like, we just want to hang back. Like, I've had a lot of moms who are like, I don't know how involved or not involved he's going to want to be. And that's fine. Like, that's why you're here. So, and then sometimes the dad's like, oh no, I definitely want to be involved. Or there's times where they're like, I'm going to stay over here because they can't handle seeing her in pain. Mm-hmm. So everybody's so different. So that's where I feel like we kind of hold the glue to the situation.
Yeah. I think that's so cool. And just thinking about my experience, I know my husband had a book with all kinds of like positions to help with labor, and I was like, crying, whatever, in pain, in the middle of the night. And I remember waking up in the midst of that, and he had a lacrosse ball and the book open and trying to figure it out. And so I could see how that would be so useful. And that's what, when we talked to the doula that we had spoken to about maybe working with her, we saw like so many benefits of it. I'm like, I never thought that I would see that as something that would be needed, because there's so many people who do it without it, like it's one of those things. But yeah, the emotional support. And what was the statistic you had told me about the amount of interventions not being used? Or,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, just like in general. So if you have a doula present, you're more likely to go into spontaneous labor versus being induced. You're less likely to need an epidural, 60% less likely. You're less likely to need vacuum extract or forceps assistance. You're 28% less likely to have a C-section, and you're less likely to have negative feelings about your birthing experience.
Wow.
So, and I was I was reading this article recently. So what's really cool is that insurance companies are now starting to cover doulas because they see the benefit. They're seeing this impact that doulas are having in the birthing community. And even so states like New York, Medicaid is covering doulas, because more in the lower income hospitals is where you see the higher death rates. And when doulas are present, those drop drastically. So it's crazy that it's not utilized more. Only 3 to 6% of women giving birth use doulas. So many people don't even know what they are, but it's not a luxury item. It's kind of a necessity now because of the death rates in the United States. And I mean, there's always different circumstances, like that birth that was breached that I had. There's most doctors do not deliver a breech baby or don't recommend it. So she really had no choice but to have a C-section. With preeclampsia, that's a high risk situation where it's like, hey, listen, we need to do something about this right now. And so in those situations, it is more about then just comfort and, then hopefully the statistics really will only be high risk, because a lot of the people who are ending up in C-sections aren't necessarily high risk. Because I started this when I was in Vegas, which has a 40% C-section rate. So almost half of the women going into labor are getting C-sections. And so many of them, it's because they're induced before they're due, or their body or their baby's ready. And then they do all these medical interventions and nothing's happening. Then they end up in a C-section. Instead of being like, hey, your body knows, your baby knows, you're safe, your body's safe, everything's fine. Let's wait until your body tells you it's ready type thing. So Vegas has such a high C-section rate there. I remember when I was there was only one doctor that was doing VBACs. They weren't allowing VBACs. And now, I mean, you see it tons more. Like where I work at, we have tons of VBAC patients coming in, and there's a lot of hospitals I know here and doctors here that allow VBACs.
We're going to take a quick break. Life is all about connecting to something bigger than your day-to-day worries like family, community, and even yourself. But at certain moments, like when your kids manage to smear chocolate cake all over your ceiling and you're wondering how the heck it got there, you need more than a sense of connection. What you really need is a break. And it's moments like these when you can take time to clear a few levels in Best Fiends, which is the 5-star rated mobile puzzle game. I love Best Fiends because it does give me some brain stimulation, and I actually get excited and feel accomplished when I conquer a level, especially one that I've been replaying over and over. There's been a handful of times that I've gotten stuck on I'm on level 523 right now. And it's fun because other people in my family play and you can have competitions going on in your free time, especially social distancing. You can still have a little friendly competition with your family and friends. And it is a great way to just kind of connect and clear your mind and yet have fun. And Best Fiends, it's the can't put it down mobile puzzle game with over 100 million downloads and counting. It's free to download and literally has millions of 5-star reviews on the Apple App Store and Google Play. There's more levels, events, and challenges added all the time. So play away because there's always one more level. And seriously, once you download Best Fiends, boredom won't stand a chance. So if you're worried that you'd get to level 3,247 and run out of fun, don't be, because right now there's 5,000 levels and counting, and there's always another update. And right now you can go download Best Fiends free today on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. Now back to the episode.
Vegas was not a great place. Like I remember, so this was 2013. Not one doctor would do delayed cord clamping. They would do skin to skin for like a second and then take the baby away. And there's just so much research now. So a third of the baby's blood is still in the placenta and the cord when they're born. So it's so important to allow it to pump and to continue to pump until either it stops pulsing, or even if you just let it pump for 2 minutes, let it pulse for 2 minutes, your baby's getting tons of iron stores and vital blood. Because you'll see then later, I don't remember at exact what age, you see higher rates of anemia and things like that happen. So nobody was allowing that, but now there's so much research out about it. And even ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, says that you should do delayed cord clamping. So they're like the head honchos over OBs and gynos, but yet people don't follow the practices. And they even say on their website, like, doulas are awesome. They're like, doulas are a great addition to a medical team. So cool. But yeah, so it's nice to see. I feel like since 2012 was when I did my first birth, like how far I've seen things come. As far as like delayed cord clamping, and like the hospital I work at now, they place the baby on you and they leave it for an hour. They don't take it to weigh and measure. As long as the baby's healthy and everything's good, they give you that golden hour of skin on skin and all of that. So, which is proven to regulate baby's breathing, temperature, all of that. So it's super cool to see how far it's come, but it's like people have been doing this for centuries. And so it's hard to be like, why are so many places resistant to it here, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think too, I love that we're moving in a better direction, like with the delayed cord clamping. And I know I asked my doctor, honestly, I was thinking, I don't think I knew about a doula, that it was a thing until your podcast. I mean, no joke, which has been like maybe a year, maybe since I got pregnant, probably. Cause I was like, oh, Miraculous Mamas, I'm going to be a mom. I'm going to listen to this podcast. So I think that is huge, is the education of that it is an option and it does exist. And, you know, there are some, I think, really everywhere. And I know my doctor said that they do the delayed cord clamping because a lot of the stuff I've read, it seems like doctors don't. So I'm glad to hear that that was an option and that they did that, or a requirement, I guess, for them. So have you heard, and I think it was 40 weeks, that my doctor said she doesn't let people go past 40 weeks because of the risk after that. Have you heard that stat?
I've heard some articles written, but I've also heard them all debunked a lot.
Right. So yeah, what are your thoughts on?
42 is usually the general. So 37 to 42 weeks, you're considered full term. After 40 weeks, because the reason they give you that time gap is because determining your due date, they go off of your last period because they have to go from somewhere. But knowing exactly when you conceived and your exact due date and all of that is really hard to determine. So some people have a period and then ovulate right away. Some people ovulate right before they get their next period. It's not the day 14 that everybody talks about.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ovulated right before you were supposed to get your next period and you got pregnant, you wouldn't be due until 42 weeks about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so different for everybody, and everybody's body and baby is different. It is recommended to get a non-stress test done to make sure that you're okay, baby's okay. Only like, I'm trying to think, 5% of women go into labor naturally on their due date or by their due date. So, wow. And which is 40 weeks. So to say that there's a risk for 95% of women, I think is incorrect.
Is that's what they say? 95% of women are at risk?
Well, no, if your doctor's saying if you go past 40 weeks,
yeah,
you're at risk, that'd be then 95% of women, going yes. past. It actually might be lower than that. 5% go on their due date. Some go before, but it'd be well over 50% of women going mm-hmm. past their due date naturally. Then right. that many women are at risk. I don't feel like that's a very accurate thing. And where I practice, we're really big on practicing. So for those of you listening, I work at a hospital. So I'm employed by a hospital and I work with a midwife and OB group there. So I work alongside 5 midwives and 1 OB and 2 other doulas, and then the staff of nurses and all of that. So we're really big on practicing evidence-based birth. So if you go to the evidence-based birth website, there's tons of stuff on there. Also on ACOG, great resources for information. So complications can occur at any time, but the risk really occurs after 42 weeks.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the point of we just want to make sure that we do that research and know for ourselves. And I don't know, because I think that my doctor would say, well, she had an article, you know what I mean? Like, so knowing that there's differing opinions, and just because that's the doctor you always went to for your checkups doesn't mean that they have to be the one that you go through delivery and labor with, because I didn't even think twice about it. And then when I read so many things, and then once I talked to her, I felt better, but I just assumed that because she was an OB, she was not about doing anything naturally. You know what I
mean? Right. And every OB practice is so different. Like you find some that are very natural and very whatever, and you find some that are very old school. So I think it's super important to find a good provider and find somebody that you're comfortable with, that you can have the important conversations, ask hard questions to, and all of that, because that's really important in feeling comfortable in your experience, because you want to make sure that you're feeling, if you don't feel validated and heard in your appointments, I doubt you're going to feel validated and heard during your birth. So it's really important to find somebody who acknowledges you and that you have a good reputation or a good relationship with.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Well, yeah, and I think, and I maybe even saying the weeks wrong. Maybe she did say after 42 weeks we'd look. But anyway, I know when she told me, like, after a certain point, I will encourage inducing you. And from that day, she knew I did not want to be induced, which is funny because then I got induced at 37 weeks. But
yeah.
Being able to go in there being informed, yeah, you're so right. And being able to ask questions. I remember that appointment where I had like a list of questions to ask her. She just stood there and talked to me, and it was like no one else was important in that moment, because I know they're rushed and I know they have a bajillion people to see. And that's so true. Yeah. If you don't feel comfortable, it's not going to be a good situation, and you can trust your gut pretty quick and be able to tell if it's not a good situation.
Yeah, I think so. I also just want to bust a couple myths really quick about doulas. Because since you said, like, a lot of people don't know what doulas are, and people always say, oh, you're a doula? Oh, so you deliver babies? I do not deliver babies. I don't really even have a desire to deliver babies. I don't do anything medical. Even if it comes to like taking your blood pressure or doing a cervical exam, I don't do any of that stuff. I would never be like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to check you to see how dilated you are. Like, that's not my field of expertise. I studied labor. I studied how to know the signs of labor. So even like where I work at now, it's really cool because since we work alongside the staff, they're like, oh, okay, the doula's here. We can like focus on other things right now. And so I'll text the midwife when I can tell, like, because there's going to be a point where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to push this baby out. You still have a little bit of time, especially if it's your first. But there's signs definitely when you're in labor. You can tell when, you know, if you're still talking through a contraction or laughing, or if you silence for the contraction and then you go back to carry on a conversation. And then at some point you're going to turn completely inwards and then your instincts are going to take over. And then, you know, there's signs to tell where you're at in labor. And then we also study like, okay, if the baby is sunny side up, what are the positions that we can do to get the baby to turn and rotate and to drop down? So then we bring those in. If the doctor's like, it's, you know, the baby feels sunny side up, or there's even a certain point in your labor where it's like, maybe the baby's not the right way, you know? So we'll do different positions to help get baby's head to drop down and to rotate. And we study all of those different things. So, and just even how to emotionally comfort you and be there for you. And so we don't do medical things. So I had, after one birth, because I think there's a lot of medical people that have misconceptions about it too. They think that we're just going to come in there and try to tell them what to do. I would never tell a medical professional what to do because I'm not a medical professional. I didn't study it. I don't know. And so I remember I was at one birth and afterwards the nurse was like, thank you so much. I don't know if she'd worked with a doula before or not. And she was just like, thank you so much for letting me do my job. And I was like, I don't know how to do your job. Like, you're welcome. I wasn't about to like take over your nursing duties. Like, right. You know, so, we're there. We are the constant during labor because your midwife, OB, nurses have other patients. They have other people that they need to take care of and see. We don't. We have you, and that's our sole focus. So, yeah, I get a lot of people who think, oh, so you're like a midwife. I'm like, no, no, I'm not. I'm not that cool. But I mean, I love what I do, and it's so much fun, and it's so cool to be a part of all these different birthing experiences because motherhood is like just watching these people go through it, these women, and having this baby on the other side of it. It's like, wow, you are so powerful.
It is insane. Yeah, it is such a cool experience. I mean, I've only been through my labor and delivery and then having our girl, but I agree so much. And I feel like if I worked in that field, one, I would be scared all the time. So I'm not supposed to be in that field. Like that would just be so nerve-wracking. I don't like when people are moany, groany, like it makes me anxious. I just know that wouldn't be a good spot for me. But two, I think I would cry every time a baby was born. It would just be such a cool experience. So
I cry almost every time.
I bet. I mean, you're literally seeing a life come into the world. It's so powerful. So what is the longest labor and delivery you've ever been a part of?
3 days.
Oh my gosh. So how do you survive that? I mean, like, what do you do? Coffee?
So our clients know that we're human too. So I can't just like stay awake for 72 hours without going to the bathroom or eating or drinking. So it was a very long induction and labor. So we kind of tag teamed it. There was one point where I drove home and slept for like 7 hours and then went back. And got food, and then her husband would go get food and he'd get it for everyone. You know, he'd be like, what do you want to eat? And bring back some food. I always pack snacks, but that was definitely the longest. I think it wasn't 3 days. It was like 52 hours or something like that. But I did go home and nap, at one point. Or there's times too, if it's a really long labor that we do like kind of tag team and be like, hey, I need to shut my eyes for a few minutes. Or if it comes to a point where the client ends up getting an epidural, because sometimes, I mean, labor is exhausting and it's like, you might need to rest, and when you get the epidural, then you're allowed to kind of rest and recover and let your body relax and do what it needs to do. So when that happens, sometimes everybody just kind of rests for a little bit and kind of regains their strength. But I mean, I've been at a birth where I showed up and 45 minutes later, the baby was born. And I've been at a birth where I showed up and 52 hours later, the baby was born.
Is it one of those, is it like an adrenaline thing though? I mean, when the baby's coming, no matter how tired you are, you forget that you're tired.
Yeah. There's definitely times in labor where I'm like, I might fall asleep.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm getting called. I've actually one night, I just had a really hard time falling asleep. So I finally fell asleep about midnight. I got called at 2 a.m. to go into this birth. And a few hours in, I'm like doing massage on this mom, like every contraction she had, I would do this massage and I'd kind of like rest my head on this chair and I'm like, don't fall asleep. Like I was so tired. But you just find the strength and you make it through. And then when it comes to baby time and pushing, it's like you have a whole new energy. So
I bet
it's weird because the mom gets an adrenaline kick and I feel like everybody else in the room does too.
Yeah, that is so cool. Oh, well, that's awesome. So I think the last thing, is there anything else with doulas? I feel like that was very informative and super helpful. Any other myths that?
I'm sure there are. I can't think of them right now. But I mean, if you guys look up the information, like there's tons of stuff out there now about it. And there's tons of information. If you're considering having one, definitely check with your insurance company and see if they will cover it. And also they come at a very wide price range. So I would look on doulamatch.net. That's a really good resource because you can find doulas who are just starting out, who maybe aren't charging as much, or you can get somebody who's been doing it for years and done 300 births and, is all of that. So Doula Match has tons of resources on there. Or if you're taking any sort of child preparation class, like hypnobirthing, Lamaze, Bradley method, they usually talk about doulas in there, and they usually have like a referral base to give you as well.
Okay, that's cool. So I feel like so far, I mean, looking at you and what you've accomplished with being a birth doula and how many births, over 30? Is that what you said? Around 30?
Yeah.
And then this podcast community. So I guess we didn't talk about, there's a Facebook community. Is that where you would say the community lives?
Yes. So there's the Miraculous Mamas Facebook group, which is where I guess I feel the most connected. There's the Instagram page, but I usually just post like information about the guest and different mom things on there. And people definitely do reach out to me on there too. But the community, I feel like, is where you feel the most supported and you feel most like a part of it, because it's where I guess I've even felt the safest, because there's a lot of things I don't share on social media. There's a lot of people who share everything on social media, and that's fine, but for me, I don't want to. And there's a lot of things that Vito and I are just kind of like, this is our journey, and this is, we want to share it with people close to us. And although the Facebook group has like over 2,000 women now, I still feel like it's close knit, and that it's a safe place where I can share and I can ask questions, and other women feel the same thing, and you don't feel judged. Like so many times I see mamas being like, I feel so stupid for asking this question, but this happened last night with my toddler and I don't know what to do. And, all the mamas are like, don't feel stupid. Like, this isn't a stupid question. This happened to me, so it's so nice to be in that community. And I was talking with one of the moderators a couple months ago, and we just feel really blessed because there's a lot of Facebook groups where things do get nasty, and motherhood can be really hard, and it is hard not to judge other people or to take things personally. And I feel like we've just really have an amazing group where people have not done that, where they've really just loved on each other. And if it's something that they don't agree or believe in, then they don't comment on it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a really amazing group, and then I love being a part of it. So
yes, me too. I really do. And so that's called Miraculous Mamas. That's the Facebook group name.
I think it's a Miraculous Mamas by Elizabeth Joy, because Miraculous Mamas was taken.
Okay. And it's Mamas like MAMA.
Yes.
I'll put it in the show notes. And then, of course, we can find you on your podcast, and I think you post them weekly. Is that correct?
Yes. Every Monday, the podcast comes out. And then every once in a while, I'll do a bonus episode.
Yeah. So any last things that you would like to share with women who, I don't know, I just see you as so inspiring, and I wonder if people are like, how do I get where she is? I have all these dreams I want to do. And I know you and I talked, and we could do a whole nother podcast about the things you want to continue to do. And there's
my
so
to-do
many
list.
Yeah. You have a huge to-do list. What advice would you give to someone who's like, well, that's cool, I want to start this podcast, or I want to start this community for whatever, but I don't think I could do it?
Yeah. I think that if not you, then who? Like if you feel this passion and if you feel this desire in your heart, do it. Because if you don't do it, somebody else will, and there's a need for it. So and also just to take the first step. And I think that the problem with our society today and the millennial generation is this instant gratification thing, right? So people don't have a hard time knowing what it's like to work really hard for something. Whereas like our grandparents had to work really hard. They didn't just start an Instagram and get 1 million followers and make $1 million, So it's like, and you see people doing that, right? So you see these people out there where it's like, well, this person just lives their life and takes cute photos and makes tons of money. And like, I can't do that. So I'm not going to do anything. And it's like, no, like everything starts small. And if you look at Instagram's a whole nother story. I don't even think Instagram's real. I feel like it's this weird time warp thing it's like, it's a weird concept to me still. Like, but it's just like a alternative world where it's not even real, So I feel like if you look at any true success story, like people who made it, I mean, how many times did they try? How many, like any successful businesswoman, like woman or man, you read their books and they're like, I pitched this and I pitched this and I failed and I got rejected and I changed it and I grew and I continued to go and I continued to learn and I invested money and I lost it. And then I went back to work and saved up more money because I really believed in this. Then I had that one person who believed in me and I made it. And that's the same, even when you look at like actors and actresses and singers, like I'm not a huge Katy Perry fan, but I know like she moved to LA and slept in her car and did everything that she had to do and continued to pitch herself and continued to whatever to try to get noticed because she believed that she could sing and she believed that somebody would hear her and want to sign her. And you just don't see that anymore. People are like, oh, I'm going to start this account. Oh, nobody followed me. I'm a loser and I'm done. And it's like, no, like then either you didn't really care that much about it and you're doing it for the fame or the likes or for whatever, like find what you're really passionate about and take a step toward that. You have to take one step. There's still so many things that I want to do and I'm learning to do. And it's always like, okay, if I want to create, so like one thing I want to do is create, a doula volunteer program for refugee women. Well, I just found out that there's a huge refugee community, like 20 minutes away. And I found out that the county, yesterday, I just found out the county that I live in has one of the highest rates in Illinois for refugees coming to. So I'm like, okay, so this is possible. But then it's still so overwhelming. Like, how do I start? Where do I, whatever? And it's like, make one phone call one person, like go to this one place and be like, hey, can I talk to somebody who's in charge here who, whatever, is this something you guys would be interested in having? And reach out, to other doulas who might wanted to be a part of this. It's like, it can seem so overwhelming, and it is, but breaking it down and taking one step and marking one thing off. And if it's something that you truly believe in or that you're passionate about, then you just have to do it. But if you're doing it for any sort of instant gratification, then I would just say to check your heart, and maybe it's not for you.
Wow. Love, love, love. Yes. Yeah. And then figuring out what is possible or what is something that you want to do or feel passionate about, because that's so true. If your heart's not in it, I mean, you couldn't help somebody labor for 52 hours and deliver a baby if your heart wasn't in it, and continue to have the consistency. I think that's key to like the fact that I want to continue listening to your podcast is, one, you've had such great guests on there and your heart is in it and you can tell, but also knowing like you're showing up, you're going to be there for us each week is huge.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Consistency is big though, for sure. Cause that's something that I struggle with other things in my life that I'm trying to grow. I'm like, oh, I want to own my own doula business. And I like go all out for a second. And then I'm like, wah, wah, wah. And then I don't, And so it's like, you definitely have to continue to build and continue to learn and grow, and consistency is huge. And it's definitely something that I'm always working on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was so much fun to talk to you and have you on here. And I just can't thank you enough for the work you've done, and I'll continue to listen as I raise this baby and hopefully have more someday.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on and for being a part of our community. It means a lot.
Yes, I love it. Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed getting to know me a little bit better and the work that I do and why I'm so passionate about it. I can't wait to share, again, my birth story with you guys. We have a doula lined up, ready to come help us at our call. Again, I'm so excited to share with you guys. So I've been having labor off and on for days, which has kind of sucked, but it's part of the journey, and everybody's journey is different. So I'm excited to share our story with you guys. And I'm really grateful for Jess for letting me use this episode. Make sure you guys check out her podcast, the Fit and Faithful podcast. She's super passionate. She is such a light and has amazing energy and just such a good woman. And I'm just grateful for her. So again, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're listening and you haven't subscribe to the Miraculous Mamas podcast. Leave us a review, join our Facebook group, our amazing Facebook group, which I talked about in the episode, and make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter. All right. Love you guys. Bye.